Alright, so now let's look at our voltage phasor, which comes off the coordinate plane here, where we have V sub R being measured along the x-axis. We have V sub C being measured along the j-axis. And then we have our resultant phasor E down there in the fourth quadrant with our angle theta. Now, going by everything you've always learned in graphing, a coordinate down here in this area here is always going to have a positive x and a negative y. So V sub c is always negative. And theta, since the way the angles rotate on a grid, they usually rotate counterclockwise, and since we're rotating it clockwise, theta is also going to be negative. So with all that information, what we do is we create a right triangle. Okay? So we have V sub r here, we have V sub c here, and again, it's negative. Theta is this angle up in here, and it is also negative, and we have E. So we can use our trigonometry as we did in just basic old right triangles to find these measurements. So if we have an example to where, let's say, V sub r is 10 volts, V sub c is negative 12 volts, and we want to find E and theta. So let's draw our triangle. And we know this is 10 volts. This here is negative 12 volts. And I'm looking to find E and theta. So I use this theta as my angle of reference, and I do know my opposite side and my adjacent side. So I'm going to use tangent. So tangent of theta is negative 12 divided by 10. And tangent of theta is negative 1.2. So now that I have that, again, you're just using your trigonometry as you have always done. And so theta is tangent inverse of negative 1.2. And so theta is negative 50.2 degrees. Now, even though when you calculate this at times, you may get positive depending on which combination of sides you use, just remember, when you're listing your final answer in an RC circuit, this angle is negative and V sub c is negative. Now I need to find E. Well, to me, the best way to do it is to do your Pythagorean theorem, where E is going to be V sub r squared plus V sub c squared. Since we are squaring both V sub r and V sub c, to make it easier for our calculations, we do not want to use the negative, because once we square a negative, it's going to become positive anyway. So what you can do is you can just use the positive values. And that way you won't have an issue. So I take the 10 squared plus 12 squared to get 244. Take the square root of that. So E is 15. Whoops, let me erase that. Getting sloppy. 15.6 volts. Okay? So, with many of y'all, or some of y'all at least, not being in the electricity, electronics, industrial maintenance programs, you're not familiar with a lot of this terminology, but you can still do the math. So try to remember what's negative, what's positive, and how to get these calculations successfully. Hopefully this helps.